Brilliant. I hope everyone can hear me okay. It's nice to meet you this afternoon. My name is Matthew Scott and I am Kent's Police and Crime Commissioner. What I'm going to do today is talk a little bit about the role of the Police and Crime Commissioner, what we do, what we're there for, what my priorities are locally, but also how you can work with your Police and Crime Commissioners to make our county safer, support your businesses, support your efforts and contribute to safeties and feelings of safety across the southeast. So thank you very much for the invitation to meet with you, and if you have got any questions, as I say, I'll be happy to answer those at the end as well. I'm looking forward to hearing some of those. So I don't know how much people know about the role of a Police and Crime Commissioner, so I always start with going back to basics because it is still a relatively new role. So Police and Crime Commissioners are celebrating their 10th year of existence this year. We were created and we had our first elections in November 2012. And the rationale for Police and Crime Commissioners in creating this role was to give the public more of a voice in policing and in criminal justice. And I'll tell you what that means in just a moment. But the role is an elected one, so it's supposed to be an election once every 4 years. Obviously, the pandemic affected that in some way, so we had a 5-year term last time, and we're now in a 3-year term to make up for it. But the important thing is that we are elected. And for me, the importance of this role is not necessarily just about the statutory and the legal responsibilities that we have. It's about what you do with the role. And for me, there are two key things about this one. Is that first and foremost is that we have to be advocates for the local communities, the residents and the businesses that we serve, that we are listening, that we are learning, that we are working together to prevent crime and antisocial behaviour, to provide options for people to be diverted out of the criminal justice system where appropriate, to help bring people to justice, but ultimately make sure that irrespective of whether you are impacted by crime or not during the course of a year, that there is someone who is working on your behalf to make sure that your community and your neighbourhood is safe. So we are advocates for our local community in policing in the wider criminal justice sphere. But in addition to that as well, the Police and Crime Commissioner is a victim champion. We are champions for the rights of victims and witnesses. And for me, that's about making sure that victims of crime get a good service right from the very beginning, all the way through, irrespective of how far the crime progresses through the process, from the point at which you contact the police all the way through to whether it gets to court. We are there to champion you and your rights, so making sure that you get a good service from the police, from the Crown Prosecution Service, and that it gets to court in a timely manner. And we do that in a number of ways, but there are rights and responsibilities that we are there to champion on your behalf. So we are advocates for our communities and we are victim champions. But all of that comes alive in what we actually do. And there are 4 key areas that I'm going to just talk to you about what Police and Crime Commissioners do and what that means in practice. So the legislation says that the Police and Crime Commissioner is responsible for setting the priorities for the local police force. We have to produce what's called a police and crime plan, and that sets out what the priorities are for the local police force during the period of the plan. My plan is called Making Kent Safer, and it runs from this year all the way through to 2025. We give that plan to the local Chief Constable, whom we are responsible for appointing and dismissing if we see appropriate, and we expect them to deliver those priorities. We hold them to account on behalf of you for delivering against those priorities, so it's a really important responsibility. I do that in public, so we have a quarterly meeting where we will talk about the progress that the force is making, and it's a public process so the public can see transparently what is going on. We have a weekly meeting locally between myself and the Chief to talk about specific matters and also bespoke briefings as well, so there's really strong accountability with that. Ultimately, as I say, I have the ability to hire and to fire the Chief Constable if I have concerns about performance or any other matters which are of concern, but obviously not a power which is used lightly or a power which is necessarily used all that often. But that first key responsibility around performance and delivery means that you've got someone setting priorities on your behalf. Secondly, I'm responsible for all of the money which comes into Kent Police. Now, I'm very keen, this has been, you know, a personal view of mine all the way through, and it's not just a personal view, it's something that we should all remember, is that there is no such thing as government money. All the money the government has is mine and yours, our taxes. So it's really important that we have someone who is elected on our behalf to make sure it's being properly spent and not being blown on silly priorities or big white elephant projects. It's really important that money is well spent. So the Kent Police budget is around about £400 million a year. That is made up of funds which come from central taxation. I'm responsible for setting the amount that you pay locally out of your council tax, making sure that is well spent. So 93% of the money that comes into Kent Police is your taxes in one way or another. And it's the same in Sussex and Surrey and all across the southeast as well. I'm ultimately responsible as well for ensuring that we are efficient with what we do with the money, but where needs arise, that we work with government and others to generate increased revenue. And irrespective of what your views are on Brexit, obviously there was an operational impact for Kent specifically. So I went to government and secured extra funding for the policing of our roads and other issues which arose as a result of the implementation of the Brexit agreement. So making sure that policing is getting resourced adequately. The third key area of responsibility I have, again, it goes back to being a victim champion, is that we are now actually responsible for commissioning services for victims of crime. I don't get an awful lot of money to do that. It's about £2 million a year, £2.5 million a year. But again, we can bid for extra where we can prove a case to support that. So I'm responsible for the overall victim support contract. They work with about 80,000 people on my behalf every single year, and that's provided by the charity of the same name, Victim Support. I also commission specialist services such as for victims of sexual violence, as well as identifying specialist needs where there are maybe gaps in the provision locally. A good example of that is where there is a big gap in the amount of services that men can access if they've been a victim of domestic or sexual violence. So we step into that gap, and we don't take money away from other services, but we use what we can bid for, what we can get extra in order to try and fill those gaps. So we are responsible for that, but we're also responsible for restorative justice. And that is a really important way of enabling victims of crime to hold perpetrators of crime to account. It can be done in a safe setting, or it can be done via correspondence, but it gives victims the ability to hold perpetrators to account for their behaviour. Maybe they're seeking an apology, maybe they're seeking an understanding of why they were targeted for the crime, and it also gives them an opportunity to tell the perpetrator the impact that it's had on them. It's really good actually for empowering victims who sometimes feel a great sense of loss after being a victim of crime. But also it's a good way of preventing reoffending, because it does sometimes have a profound impact on the perpetrator as well. And finally, and again, another key area of what I'm responsible for is partnerships. So working with charities, businesses, community groups, local councils, and others to make sure that we are doing all our best to prevent crime and antisocial behaviour from taking place. Now, the police can do many, many things. They can solve crimes, they can prevent reoffending, etc. But the police can't, on their own, prevent crime and antisocial behaviour. It has to be a partnership. There are so many contributing factors to crime and antisocial behaviour that you have to work in partnership to deal with it. So I would, and my colleagues across the southeast do this as well. We will provide grants to different organisations where they can demonstrate there is a case that they can deliver something which will reduce or prevent crime and antisocial behaviour. We do that transparently, so you will see on your local PCC's website opportunities to bid for specific funding. At the moment, there's projects around safer streets in our public areas, or antisocial behaviour, or preventing violence against women and girls. So there are lots of options across. We do it all different. We all have different priorities. We all do it differently, but we all do it transparently as well. So If there are projects that you, for example, wanted to work on locally that you would benefit and would prevent crime, prevent antisocial behaviour, maybe prevent fraud or something else from occurring that would generally make people feel safer, and you can prove that case, there's funding available to work with us as PCCs to do that. So you just need to look for your local PCC's website and apply in the same way as everybody else. So those are the key responsibilities of a police and crime commissioner. But what we are not is we are not police officers. We, as I said at the beginning, we're elected. So by that virtue, we are politicians. We're not political in what we do, but we are politicians. So we don't run our police forces on a day-to-day basis. We do hold our chief constables to account. We make sure they're performing and delivering for our county, but it's up to them how they deploy their resources to do that. We might have opinions, and of course, the chief and I will discuss where I think resources should go and where he thinks resources should go. And ultimately, if it delivers the police and crime plan, then that's the negotiation we have. But ultimately, it is their decision. So you have that clear dividing line between the role of a chief constable and the role of a police and crime commissioner, so that you don't get that political interference into local policing. So what does all that mean in practice? There's an awful lot of, I've probably used, if I were to do a word cloud of my speech, responsibility would probably be the top word coming up so far. But what does that mean in practice? It means that locally we've been doing the best we can with the resources we have to maximise policing. We're working with government to recruit more police officers. So since 2016, I've been on a campaign to recruit more police, and the government has supported that with the Uplift programme. We've got over 800 more police in Kent now compared to 2016. Now, and in the interest of transparency, yes, we did lose police officers during the coalition period. We did, absolutely, 600, but we are over and above that now, and with 185 more police coming in, we've got an opportunity to be matching population growth, so a lot more police officers. We're using those police officers to tackle the crimes that people have told me are important in my policing surveys: burglary, robbery, antisocial behaviour, and across all three of those areas we are seeing reductions and sustained reductions as well. So using the resources, targeting them to the areas that you want to see action taken on, and where we're identifying needs, particularly around economic crime and fraud, using those resources effectively to create those teams in order to benefit local people. But also working and creating new partnerships with other agencies. We have across the South East violence reduction units, which bring in the public and the private sector to take a public health approach to tackling violent crime. So there's an awful lot of activity going on, which is being led by your local police and crime commissioner, whether you are Kent, Sussex, Surrey, Thames Valley, Hampshire, or wherever you are. Your PCC is on the front line working with the police to try and tackle crime and antisocial behaviour. And fundamentally, that is the important thing about this role, because we're doing that on your behalf. We're listening to your views, we're taking on board what you're saying, we are delivering for you. So I'm a very passionate advocate, as you can expect, for the role of police and crime commissioner, one, at least because I'm doing the role and I can see the benefit, but actually building those partnerships, building those responsibilities is crucial, because it means that we can make you all feel safer. So what I would say is, irrespective of where you are, is make sure that you're building those relationships with your PCC if you're not already, whether it is as a business or as a professional, or if you're involved in a community group or organisation that has something that you can contribute to the fight against crime and antisocial behaviour, is get involved, subscribe to mailing lists, bid for funding, get involved, watch what's going on, because actually there's some really significant opportunities here to build partnerships to make people feel safer. You can find out who your local PCC is very, very easily. Obviously, I'm in Kent, Katie Bourne in Sussex, Lisa Townsend in Matthew Barber in Thames Valley, or Donna Jones in Hampshire. Wherever you are, there is a PCC there who is accountable to you and should be listening to you and working with you. So I hope that you do take that opportunity, because it is really important that we build these relationships. I'm going to conclude my remarks there, because obviously I've covered quite a lot of ground there in a short space of time. But if you are interested in any of the work that I'm doing, you can find it all on my website, kent-pcc.gov.uk. You can find me on social media at Matthew in Kent on Instagram and on Twitter. I'm on LinkedIn, I'm on Facebook. So if you want to engage, ask me any questions, whether or not you're Kent or otherwise, I'm happy to advise and guide and put you in contact with the right people. But I'm also very happy to take any questions that you've got here today as well, because that's really important. So I'd like to understand, how safe do you feel in the area that you live, in the area that you work? What can we be doing to work with you to make your community safer, your businesses better? What can we do for you, because we are your servants? So I thank you for the invitation to speak to you today. I look forward to answering any questions that you've got, but as I say, please feel free to contact me outside of this so that I can answer your questions or provide you advice or guidance. Or if you have been a victim of crime and you weren't satisfied with the service that you've received, do let me know that as well, so that we can take the appropriate action. So again, Susan, thank you very much for facilitating. Thank you very much to everyone for listening. And I'm happy to take any questions that you've got. Thank you very much.
Brilliant. Thank you so much, Matthew, for a brilliant presentation. There is a couple of questions. So could say has a question that says, would you like to be involved in safer streets and antisocial behaviour in local area? How would I go about it?
So the Safer Streets funding will be geographically specific. So it's based on, so the most crucial thing is what your area has been granted and what's been running. So in Kent, I've been given £1.4 million to work in Maidstone, Gravesend, Rochester, and Chatham and Canterbury. So across 4 local council areas, but 5 towns in particular, to do different schemes with CCTV, with lighting, with youth diversion, with training to prevent violence against women and girls. But in Sussex and Surrey and elsewhere, they will be running different schemes in different towns. So the best thing to do is to look on your PCC's website, or if you just search Safer Streets, you should find the Home Office announcement saying which towns are going to be benefiting from this money, and then contact your PCC to see what plans they've got in place, but crucially what you can offer. So if you are Kent based, you can contact me directly via my website, and we can put you in touch with my commissioning team, and we can tell you what we're doing locally and whether or not there's an opportunity to work together. But each PCC will be working in different areas on different schemes, so there are opportunities to become involved.
Brilliant. Another question from Stephen is, does the PCC have any influence on the policy issues concerning migrants and small boats, given their record numbers, and where are all these people currently?
So policing isn't responsible for managing the small boats crisis. That is the responsibility of the Border Force and the Home Office. Now, Kent Police and other police forces do assist with that, but we're not the lead authority. So, for example, if a small boat came ashore and Kent Police were first on the scene, they would round those people up as best they can and get them to Border Force, by whether Border Force turn up and take them away or they'll get transported there somehow. So they do support, and they do targeted action days as well, where they will ask Kent Police to come and support them to increase the capacity where they don't have enough numbers maybe to cover it, or they want to do a surge activity in a particular area. So Kent Police do support the Border Force, but Border Force are the main agency responsible. So if there's a particular local issue and you want to report some intelligence, then Border Force and the Home Office are the right agencies to talk to.
Okay. Stephen also commented, there are stories that the Mayor is poaching Kent Police officers. Does this have material effect on your recruiting?
The short answer is yes. So we have lost 70 so far. We've got 70 people who have applied to join the Met and take advantage of the bonus scheme which they're offering. So for people who don't know, because the Met is being unsuccessful in recruiting new police officers, they are poaching them from other police forces. So Kent is one of those areas nearby which they're targeting. They're offering a £5,000 golden hello payment, plus if you work in the Metropolitan Police, you get an extra London weighting as well. So all in all, there could be a £9,000-10,000 bonus, benefit in your first year if you leave Kent to go to London. We just cannot compete with that. We are paying our police officers now as much as we possibly can, that we're legally allowed to. And as a result, we are in the process of losing 70 of our officers now. Out of an organisation of 3,950 police officers, that might not seem a lot. It's about 2% nearly, but they are not taking our new officers, which is the biggest cohort of people we've got. They're taking our experienced officers. They're the ones that they're targeting, the ones who benefit the most from the extra money, but also the skills. So they're targeting those officers who've got sort of between 2 and 5 years experience as a minimum, but really what they want is those with 25 years plus. And what we're trying to monitor is we don't get then the names of these officers until their vetting requests come through, is trying to assess the impact on their skills, the skills that we would be losing, and trying to manage that in some way. And so if we know what roles these people do and how confident we are to replace them, then we can manage a pathway for them out and then try and recruit new officers in. I'm less worried about recruiting people in because we have a really good track record of that. What I'm worried about is losing the experience. So what the Met has done, and they're doing it to all forces around London, is really, really annoying, really sneaky, because it kind of came out of the blue. And it just places more pressure on forces outside of London because they have been failing to recruit police officers. So it's a big, big challenge. It's a big challenge. We're doing everything that we can to make the lives of our police officers better. We've got a 12-point plan that we're publishing this week to make life better for them, which includes a small increase in their pay to the maximum that we're allowed to do via the South East allowance. But it is a big problem. And until the Met stop doing this, it's going to carry on being a big problem.
That's very interesting, Matthew, and thank you for the information. If there's any further questions, I'm happy to get it through training@IIRSM.org and forward it to Matthew, which will be more than happy to answer. And also, as Matthew said, you can contact him directly through his website, which will be shared with you after this webinar. So if there's no more questions, we will be ending the webinar now. Thank you so much, Matthew, for taking your valuable time for speaking with us today. And I hope everyone has a lovely rest of the afternoon.
Brilliant. Thank you very much, everyone.
Okay, thank you. Bye-bye.